Hey, everybody, and welcome to Genesis, the Bible study series. Hey, everybody, and welcome to part 16 of the Bible study series. Tonight, this evening, we are getting into. Nope. Hey, everybody, and welcome to part 16 of the Bible study series. Wow, today we are getting into chapters 20 and also chapter 21. Today, coming out of chapter 19, man, wow, there's a lot in there. There's a lot of deep kind of undercurrent of messages and things to really take from chapter 19. Is crazy with Sodom and Gomorrah and obviously Lot and everything that was taking place, and ultimately God's grace and mercy, and considering Abraham's prayer, about Lot, and about that city where he was and everything, and bringing him out of that, but also, man, seeing the consequence, the perfect judgment and power of that judgment to completely wipe Sodom and Gomorrah off of the map. That just such wickedness that was taking place, and we got a taste of that. And the Lord, he had enough. The cries had been coming to him, of such great sin, and certainly was that. And he obviously took care of business and everything, but in the midst of all that, again, we saw the grace and mercy of removing, who was considered righteous out of the destruction of that. Okay, something so great there. And today, like I said, we're getting into chapters 20 and 21, and this is awesome. I think this is ending with chapter 21. This is perfect timing. I didn't time it like this, but this is certainly perfect timing since we have Thanksgiving tomorrow, and we're gonna have a little bit of a holiday break, and we're gonna be spending time with the family and just relaxing, refreshing, reflecting, and whatnot. And when we come back for the next week, and where we're going to be picking up in chapter 22. Wow, I got a lot to prepare for. I hope that you're ready for that, because, folks, I got to tell you, this is going to be a huge chapter in so many different ways. So I'm excited about that, but I'm excited about this. This sets up so much and kind of caps off a part of kind of where we've been headed here in the last few chapters, which is really cool. So here we go, and as always, please pray before diving into this and ask that God would meet you in his word and just continue to unfold and peel back layers and reveal more and more through his word in such an amazing way. So here we go, chapter 20, and I want to just start off reading, and we'll kind of recap this. It says, after the whole destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the ending part with Lot and his daughters, and how that just ended so just not good and everything. It says Abraham moved south to the Negev and lived for a while between Kadesh and Shur, and then he moved on toward Gerar. And while living there as a foreigner, Abraham introduced his wife Sarah by saying, "She is my sister." Does this ring a bell? So King Abimelech of Gerar sent for Sarah and had her brought to him at his palace. Okay, so this better sound familiar, because just several chapters ago, we encountered the same thing. Remember when Abraham was, the famine occurred and everything in the land of Canaan, and he had to go to Egypt to survive, to get food and things like that and supplies. So he took his family there, and what did he do with Pharaoh? The exact same thing. He said, "This is my sister," and we call this a half truth because technically Sarah is his sister, kind of a half sister in a way, but also his wife. And so look at how very similar to the story that we read a few chapters ago with Pharaoh and how all of that happened. And the same thing here is that we're going to find out that Abraham was letting fear creep in, and his faith was leaking out in these moments, okay? But watch what God does here, okay? It says in verse 3, but that night God came to Abimelech in a dream and told him, you are a dead man, for that woman you have taken is already married. But Abimelech had not slept with her yet. So he said, Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Didn't Abraham tell me she is my sister? And she herself said, yes, he is my brother. Abimelech said, I acted in complete innocence, so my hands are clean. And I love this. Verse 6, in the dream, God responded, yes, I know you are innocent. That's why I kept you from sinning against me and why I did not let you touch her. Now return the woman to her husband, and I will pray, and he will pray for you, for he is a prophet. Then you will live. But if you don't return her to him, you can be sure that you and all your people will die. Okay, so here's the first thing. Obviously, with what Abraham did here, kind of presenting the same, deception, this half truth that deceives, here in this case, King Abimelech. And we saw with Pharaoh how that just, God brought plague and things like that into his household because of what had happened and everything. And here we go again, Abraham's deception, which is being sparked by his fear for his life. Okay, we'll read that in just a second. He's trying to make this decision on his own. He's thinking this is what is best. He's not having complete trust and faith in God. And so what happens is that this opens the door for sin, right? This exposes Sarah. This exposes King Abimelech, and also it deepens Abraham's own sin with this continual pattern, that's starting to take place here. Okay, and so we see where the Lord, though, he's sitting here and saying, while you're trying to do your own thing, and while this King Abimelech is on the verge of committing sin, the Lord steps in. Look at what he's doing to take care of his treasure, okay, to take care of his covenant, this covenant promise, which is about, building a covenant family for himself. He is doing everything that he can to ensure that this promise, this great blessing that's going to be for all of the earth, is going to be taken care of. Okay, and that nothing comes, against, in this case, against Sarah, that's going to, twist and turn this in some other way. So look what God does there. He comes to Abimelech in a dream, and I love the fact that he says, he states the facts. He's like, hey, that woman you've taken is already married. Okay, and when Abimelech says, hey, I didn't know, right? He's like, I acted in complete innocence and my hands are clean. I love the fact that the Lord says, yes, I know you are innocent. And he says, that's why I kept you from sinning against me. Okay, I love that part right there. And he says, and why I did not let you touch her. Okay, this goes to show such great insight as to how, Abraham and his family and his wife Sarah, and the seed that is there within Sarah. We know that Sarah is going to be, she's promised to become pregnant, and how God is just, how he cherishes, how that treasure there and everything that's going to happen, just that viewpoint from him, which is so great. And he's like, that's why I kept you from sinning against me, because everything that I'm about to do through these people is for my glory. It's for my kingdom, and my kingdom being reflected within these people that are going to, come from this man and this woman. And man, that's such a crazy thing. He said, that's why I've kept you from sinning against me and why I did not let you touch her. So he says, return Return Sarah to Abraham, and he will pray for you, for he is a prophet. He says, but if you don't, you can be sure that you and all your people will die. Okay, and so what happens through the next few verses that is that obviously Abimelech, he gets up and he calls all his servants together, and he's returning Sarah to Abraham. And in verse 9 he says, "What have you done to us, Abraham? What crime have I committed that deserves treatment like this, making me and my kingdom guilty of this great sin? No one should ever do what you have done. Whatever possessed you to do such a thing?" Okay, and doesn't that response, it's so similar to Pharaoh. Again, just a few chapters. He's like, what have I done to, that you've brought this upon us? Okay, and so Abraham replied, he said, "I thought, this is a godless place, and they will want my wife and will kill me to get her." So again, this tells us of the mindset of Abraham here. I mean, he continues on. He says, she really is my sister, for we both have the same father. Okay, we know that, but different mothers. So it's like a half truth. And he says, "I married her, and when God called me to leave my father's home and travel from place to place, I told her, 'Do me this favor, and wherever we go, tell people that I am your brother.'" Okay, but the thought process that kind of catapulted this whole, this whole thing is that he says is that they will want my wife and will kill me to get to her. So Abraham, he is fearing for his life. He is fearing for his safety and for his security, because of Sarah thinking that, they are going to want to take her and kill him in order to be able to do that. So there we go again. That's where the fear is seeping in, okay, right? Or the fear is creeping in, and his faith is leaking out. Okay, he's not completely trusting in God, and he's taking things into his own hands. And look at how that exposed such a great sin, that could have done some horrible things there. And I love what the study Bible says. It says Abraham had used the same trick before to protect himself, and that was back in chapter 12. And although Abraham is one of our heroes of faith, he did not learn his lesson well enough the first time. In fact, by giving in to the temptation again, he risked turning a sinful act into a sinful pattern of lying whenever he suspected his life was in danger. So you notice that is that where Abraham is tripping up, it's along the same, it's got the same tone. It's like a mirror, the exact same story as we had with Pharaoh. And again, it was spawned by feeling that his life was going to be in danger, that he would be killed, so that the person could get to his wife and everything. Okay, so that's something for us to take into mind, and we can see where this type of temptation for Abraham, that was a part of his weakness. That was when it came to his life and regarding his wife Sarah being in a foreign country and all that. There was a lot of anxiety there. There was so much fear, and for him this was a weakness. And I can imagine when it's so much, constantly, on you, and being a foreigner for so long and having to travel always, that could be a legitimate fear. But it's like, man, we know of what, like, such great faith, Abraham has, and such a great relationship with the Lord. But this was one of those areas where he just did not completely trust or give this situation over to the Lord for him to do. And even still, right, even with that fact, when we see two times now where sin has crept in and he has not given it all completely to the Lord, look how the Lord completely takes over. Okay, again, to keep his possession, to keep his promise, and everything that he is about to do through them, to keep all of that perfectly intact. So when we don't completely give, a situation or our fears or whatever it may be over to God, and when He's trying to do something through us, okay, I love how He just completely takes over. Okay, and that's something to pray over and speak over, in your life, when God is working through you. Okay, and there He's got a task that has to be completed, through your life and through your works and everything that you are. Is that in the midst of our weaknesses, in the midst of our sin and our lack of faith, is that He is going to just come. There's going to be times when He's going to take over, okay, in order to restore us and to keep us on track. And I think that's something so amazing. So he was talking to Abimelech there, and so Abimelech's like, here, take sheep, goats, and cattle, female and male servants. He's like, look, I'm giving you silver, giving you money, land, everything. And again, similar to what Pharaoh, the same thing. He's like, here, take all this, and just like go on. Let's be rid of what almost just happened right here. Okay. And so remember what God said to Abimelech in the dream there. He said, return Sarah his wife, and he will pray for you, for he is a prophet. And look what happens here in verse 17. It says, then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female servants, so they could have children. For the Lord had caused all the women to be infertile because of what happened with Abraham's wife, Sarah. So, again, that gives us an idea of what was taking place. Okay, the consequence. Look how Abraham's fear, lack of faith, exposed Abimelech to sin. And yes, he did have to endure the consequence of that sin, even though in his heart and in his mind he was innocent of it. It was still an act against God, against Sarah here. What happened with Abraham's wife, Sarah, and what could have completely thrown things, off track, so to speak. Okay, so because of that, the consequence of all of this was that God had closed up, the wombs of Abimelech's wife and his female servants, and even Abimelech himself. Okay, it says and God healed Abimelech. So God had caused something to where he could not, produce, he could not, be intimate or whatever it may have been. And also with his wife and the female servants, he did something. He caused them to where they could not have children. But because of everything, because of returning, right? Like the Lord said, if you return his wife and everything, it will be restored to you. So Abraham, he prayed to God, and God healed everyone that was involved. Okay. And here we go into chapter 21, and the title of this chapter is The Birth of Isaac. And here we go. I love the first verse of this. And it says, the Lord kept his word and did for Sarah exactly what he had promised. And remember, just a few chapters back, when the Lord came, okay, we had 3 visitors that came. Abraham greeted them, and they treated them. Sarah cooked food, and they refreshed them and everything. They served them, okay. And we came to find out that one of them was none other than the Lord himself, and his 2 angels with him. And what did the Lord say? He said, I will return this time next year, and your wife Sarah will be pregnant. Okay, and she laughed. She laughed to herself in her heart, and she said, there's no way. Are you serious? 99 years old. This isn't going to happen. Okay, and the Lord said, watch. So here we go. The Lord kept his word, and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. And so she became pregnant, and she gave birth to a son for Abraham in his old age. And this happened, I love this. This happened at just the time God had said it would. I love that again because look, uh we can get so wrapped up in doubt and everything like that alone, just being able to get pregnant at that point. But the fact that it happens exactly at the time that he said it would. He said, I will return this time next year. Okay, and here we are this time next year, and boop, here we go. I love that. In verse 3, it says, and Abraham named their son Isaac. And I want to point this out is that Isaac, in in the Hebrew language, it stands for he laughs. Okay, and this is something that's really important. Kind of a mixture of a note between the study Bible and some commentary that I read a lot, and said names are so important, and they point to God's plan and his power. Okay, I love that. And so 8 days later, 8 days after Isaac was born, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded. So remember, that was part of Abraham's part of the agreement, the covenant between he and God. His part was to circumcise every male, after they are 8 days old. Okay, every male had to be circumcised. And so here we go. 8 days after he was born, Abraham followed through just as God commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. So remember, is anything too difficult for the Lord? Okay, no. And so here we go in verse 6. And Sarah declared, God has brought me laughter. All who hear about this will laugh with me. Remember, Isaac equals laughter. He laughs. She says, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse a baby? Yet I have given Abraham a son in his old age. So it's so amazing, folks. Here we go. We received that promise. Okay, and I hope you see the context of this and just how incredible it is. I hope you can notice the power of it and how it's funny. The Lord said he's going to be named Isaac, which is about laughter, and how funny this is, and how Sarah declares right here that God has brought me laughter, and all who hear about this will laugh almost in disbelief, saying there's no way. But look at how the importance, the symbolic nature of his name, and how it points to God's plan and his power, and how is there anything too difficult for him? No, there's not. Okay, and we go on in verse 8, and it says, when Isaac grew up and was about to be weaned, Abraham prepared a huge feast to celebrate the occasion. But Sarah saw Ishmael. Okay, remember, the son of Abraham. This Ishmael was the son of Abraham and her Egyptian servant Hagar. And we saw that whole mess that started to, butt heads and create a lot of friction there. Okay, so Sarah sees Ishmael, Hagar's son, making fun of Isaac. This was, when we say making fun, we could say, this was in with a mocking intent. This was bullying. This was, not a good thing. This wasn't just, ha ha, we're buddy. No, it wasn't like that. So she turned to Abraham and she demanded, this rubbed her in such the wrong way that she said, get rid of that slave woman and her son. He is not going to share the inheritance with my son Isaac. I will not have it. So here we go again. Does this sound similar to just a few chapters ago? Again, look at how these situations are almost mirroring themselves. And it says in verse 11, this upset Abraham very much because Ishmael was his son. But God told Abraham, do not be upset over the boy and your servant. Do whatever Sarah tells you. For Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted, but I will also make a nation of the descendants of Hagar's son, Ishmael, because he is your son too. Okay, so look at this, folks. This is telling us right here. We've heard this before. We've heard this promise, this part of the promise from God, concerning Hagar and Ishmael and how he's going to be made into a great nation. And it's because this right here. It says, because he is your son too. Okay, now this speaks a lot, I think, to the overall covering of Abraham's relationship, his faith with the Lord, and obviously the covenant, between he and God and everything that's taking place. That even a I don't want to say a secondary son, but even a son that's not from his wife Sarah, even another son that he has, he will be, he will be made into a nation, right? So many descendants, made into a great nation, because he is your son too. Okay, and this is very interesting. I want you to hold on to this, because later on we're going to find out that it's like, well, why would God do this? Because Ishmael, his descendants who become the Ishmaelites, they are actually going to become very, very hostile against the nation of Israel. Okay, the Ishmaelites, they're going to become a great nation, but they are going to be so hostile and do a lot of wrong to Abraham's descendants, this nation of Israel, this family that God is building. It's like, man, this is okay. This is kind of weird. Why is this happening? But hang on to that. See how God is going to be faithful in his promise, to Hagar's son and everything. But watch how this plays out. There's a very important reason why it's made to play out the way that it does. Okay. And so early the next morning, Abraham, he prepared food and a container of water, strapped them on Hagar's shoulders, and then he sent her away with their son. And she starts wandering aimlessly in the wilderness of Beersheba. Okay, now here we go. She's wandering. She has no idea where she's going. And it says in verse 15, when the water was gone, she put the boy in the shade of a bush. She put Ishmael in the shade of a bush. Then she went and sat down by herself about 100 yards away. And she said to herself, I don't want to watch the boy die, as she burst into tears. So obviously the water had been consumed. They had drank all the water. And so they were so exhausted, so tired. Ishmael, he was dying of thirst. So she thought. And so she said she can't bear to watch it. She can't bear to see her son die. So she puts him in the shade of a bush, and she just goes and says, I can't do this. And she cries out. And look what happens though. It says in 17, but God, every time we hear but God, it's such an amazing thing, right? But God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven, Hagar, what's wrong? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Go to him and comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants. So first of all, look at the approach there. He's like, what's wrong? Don't be afraid. He's like, I hear you. And remember before that, it's the same exact thing. He said, the Lord has heard your cry. He has heard your plea, your prayer. Okay, the same exact thing here. And he says, go to him and comfort him, for he's reminding her, for I will make a great nation from his descendants. Okay, and then in verse 19, and then God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well full of water. And she quickly filled her water container and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy as he grew up in the wilderness. Few things that I want to point out here, in case you missed it, is one, all right, we've heard about the angel of the Lord before. Now we're hearing the angel of the Lord, the angel of God, calling out to Hagar from heaven. Okay, and a few key words in here are telling us who this is. All right, when it says in verse 18, go to him and comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants. Okay, again, speaking with that authority, with that power. And who do you think has that type of authority? Who do you think has been given that type of authority and power to say, for I will make a great nation out of him? Okay, click. Yeah, you know who that is. That's the Lord himself right there. That is Jesus right there. Okay, speaking down to her. Okay, and I love this. Number 2. Notice how it said, then God opened Hagar's eyes, and then she saw a well full of water. And I wanted to point this out because we can get so caught up, we can get so consumed, in our situation. We can go back to the very, to the very last chapter there in 20 that we just covered. We can be so consumed by the situation and the outcomes that we think are going to take place that we totally are blinded to God's grace, to his provision, to his protection, etc., etc. You go down the line. It just happened with Abraham again, and here it is now with Hagar. She's done. She's at the end of her rope, and all of her hope is lost, and because of the situation, okay, she is so blinded. She's so caught up in this situation that she is blinded by the provision that is right there for her. Okay, because it says, then God opened her eyes. Okay, it's like, hey, wake up. Look. And it's right, look, I am taking care of you. And she saw a well full of water. Okay, and they were both able to take a drink. And man, we gotta take that into our own lives when we're so caught up in those situations, when when fear is trying to drown out, to block out, obstacles are trying to, just to blind us from the provisions that are literally maybe right around the corner or right in front of our face. And yeah, she may have been so exhausted, but God opened her eyes. And if we would just put our faith and our trust in God and open our eyes, we will see the provisions that he has in place for us, the protection, the symbols of grace and things that he's using, to lift us up, throughout our lives. Okay, and it says in verse 20, and God was with the boy as he grew up in the wilderness, and he became a skillful archer, and he settled in the wilderness of Paran. And his mother arranged for him to marry a woman from the land of Egypt. And that's going to be pretty interesting. So that's awesome. All right, so hang on to that. So here we go now. About this time, Abimelech, okay, remember God approached him in a dream and everything, and he's like, wow, the Lord is with this man. He's realizing, like, God, Abraham's God, man, he is taking care of him. Okay, so Abimelech comes and approaches Abraham, okay, and he says, God is obviously with you, helping you in everything you do. Man, and I just picked up on this. I love that. We know by reading through about Abraham's faith and how God constantly working behind the scenes, but when other people notice it, when it's obvious to other people that God is in your life, that He is with you, that He is by your side and helping you in everything that you do, man, that speaks to just imagine if we had such faith and such a relationship with, with the Lord like that, to where it's just obvious, okay, to other people like it is to Abimelech right here. And so he he comes to Abraham and he's like, "Hey, swear to me in God's name that you will never deceive me, because you just did." Right, just a little while ago. But he says, "Please, that you will never deceive me, my children, or any of my descendants. I've been loyal to you, so now swear that you will be loyal to me and to this country where you are living as a foreigner." So here we go. Abraham's here. God, it's obvious, okay? And so Abimelech is wanting to come together, have this like treaty of peace between the two, this promise, this agreement and covenant between the two of him, because he knows that God is with him and he's already had a taste of that power. And man, if he can just, if he can come into a fellowship, a partnership with Abraham and be kind of set, smart guy right here, okay? Because he knows of the power. If you do anything against Abraham, you know how that can go. All right, so that's what's going on right here. So Abraham and Abimelech, they come into an agreement here. They come into a covenant together. There's more text about, a well that Abraham dug and everything, and acknowledging that that's his well, to be able to get fresh water and everything like that. And so he gives some lambs to Abimelech, in that regard and everything. And that's kind of how the chapter ends. In verse 33 it says, "Then Abraham planted a tree at Beersheba, and there he worshipped the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham lived as a foreigner in in the Philistine country for a long time." Okay, and that's where chapter 21 ends. So chapter 20 and 21, it's got this, again, there's a lot of different things going on where we're seeing almost, again, that mirror, that reflection of some things that have happened in the previous chapters. And that, I think that goes to, to speak a lot about our human nature, how we keep falling, in the same, ruts of sin and temptation and things like that. But then it also reflects, God and how he steps in and how he covers, a situation in the midst of our mistakes, of our sins, trying to take things, into our own hands when we aren't completely trusting and having faith, of God's provision and protection through a situation. Okay, and I think that's a great thing to keep in mind, and something that we can obviously apply in our own lives and everything. And the fact that here we go, here's a part of that promise coming, a reality right here, to where Sarah gave birth to Isaac at 100 years old. Okay, and and I know it feels like this, these last few chapters with God's promises and everything's of a son, like everything has been building up and building up, and it's like boom, it finally happens. And what's, I can't wait to see the rest of the story and how everything takes place. And yeah, it's amazing. But man, I talked about chapter 22 when we get past the Thanksgiving holiday break and everything like that, where we're going to pick up. And chapter 22 is like, what is this? And what it is, it's amazing. It is, I would say, yeah, in Genesis, it's got to be one of the most incredible chapters, if not in the entire Bible as well. And we're going to discover just why, I feel that way, and I think you will as well, and and everything. It's a mind-blowing chapter, and we think that it's just about one thing. We might have the wrong, perception about this chapter, but when we get our perception in the right place and with the context of everything that's going on with the relationship between Abraham and the Lord and what's going to be taking place with his prom, oh my gosh, this chapter is absolutely insane. It's huge, and it is something that in the most incredible way points to Jesus. And whew, man, so reflect on chapters 20 and 21. I know we were kind of going through those quick, and everything. It's the day before Thanksgiving, and got a lot going on, but we're seeing how this is just getting to that point. Isaac has been born, and then watch what happens when we get to chapter 22 and how Jesus is there. It's pointing to him. It is such an incredible thing. So I hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I will as well. And pray over this, reflect over it, and we will pick back up next week. Thanks, guys.